The Shadow Animatronics, one of FNAF's biggest unsolved mysteries to this day that appear in FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, Ultimate Custom Night and FNAF AR. They are such an odd addition to the story to the point people often ignore them on their channels. Sometimes entirely, even me. But today we stop ignoring and Shadow Freddy and attempt to answer, to the best of our ability with the extremely little information we have, what are the Shadow Animatronics? Why do they act how they do in FNAF 3? Why is Nightmare directly connected? And what is the reason Shadow Bonnie returns in FNAF AR? Let's find out. Don't forget to quickly scroll down, subscribe, turn on notifications, like the video, scroll back up, and enjoy. Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie are introduced in FNAF 2 as secret Easter eggs, but seem to take on a more serious role in FNAF 3, appearing in the main story mini-games, while also still secretly appearing in the office. Shadow Freddy on his own appears in FNAF 4 as Nightmare, who is outright called Shadow Freddy in the files, and they're both referenced slightly too in the mini-games, but then they both do not return into Ultimate Custom Night as a fun secret antagonist. But then in FNAF AR, suddenly Shadow Bonnie seemingly takes center stage, having an entire portion of the main gameplay dedicated to them, and then also appearing in a short story in the Fazbear Fright series called Hide and Seek. Anything from then on is just an Easter egg or reference to the two. This leaves us with a lot of questions to answer, but with extremely limited information. And with that in mind, reminder that this is purely speculation and just my best guess with all the information we have so far. Let's begin with what the Shadow Animatronics are. We can't go this entire video without mentioning the most popular theory that arose from their first appearances, and was a pretty consistent theory until recently, which was that they were past employees who died from the Springlock failures that we hear about in FNAF 3's Night 4 phone call.
After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, the company has deemed the suit temporarily unfit for employees,
and that they've been haunting the franchise ever since. Although that left the question of what their intentions would have been in the Night End minigames in FNAF 3. Some say this could be referencing how they felt guilty and wanted to help guide the spirits in the right direction because they weren't able to stop the murders, etc. So obviously that whole theory was just reaching at straws because we had nothing else. But now we're quite a few years ahead and have a lot more lore and new ways that everything works, to the point that I think we can actually pinpoint their existence to something different, as well as Nightmare's existence. For this though, let's skip ahead from their first appearances and go to their most recent appearance, FNAF AR. Did anyone else find this strange? This animatronic that wasn't even too relevant for years just suddenly shows up as a main centerpiece for its own gameplay section. Although when you actually start to look at what this entire section is about, you'll begin to know where I'm heading with this. In this section, it's basically a one-on-one with Shadow Bonnie that occurs after you collect too much Dark Remnant, and then you need to shine the flashlight on it multiple times until you win, blah 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 blah. This is quite an odd mechanic. Why does Shadow Bonnie appear after collecting too much Dark Remnant? An interesting point is written about Remnant in the Ultimate Guide, raising a good point that if Remnant is a conductor of emotion, it's possible that Bright Remnant forms from positive emotions, while Shadowy Remnant is formed from negative ones. So with this random inclusion in consideration, is it possible that Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy are the ramifications of all the Remnant that have come from events such as the Missing Children's incident? We already know that Molten Freddy has the remnant of the Missing Children's incident already, so is it possible that there were more ramifications for their remnant than just that? Think about it. We know that the Shadow Animatronics existed before FNAF 2 even happened, due to them appearing in that game, which would make sense if they came from the Missing Children's incident, but it would also make sense considering FNAF 3's minigames, where they seem to guide the children into finding the killer after trying to find the killer for so many years, or just leading them into being freed from their suits, which all helps ultimately lead to William's defeat. They're never seen away from the children, always seemingly following them. Notice though that after the children are freed and William is defeated, they don't appear again. From then on, we only see references to them both, until Shadow Bonnie appears in FNAF AR, a questionably canon appearance, to connect the idea of Remnant to them, metaphorically showcasing how too much Dark Remnant leads to them, simply showing how the shadows came to be. They are the manifestations of the pain and agony of the souls trapped inside the animatronics, all ultimately forming a single entity. Freddy. Although, what if it's not that they're both simply created from one of the missing children's incidents, but both incidents separately creating both entities? Shadow Freddy coming from the remnant of the original missing children's incident in 1985, possessing the original animatronics, while Shadow Bonnie coming from the remnant of the second incident, possessing the toy animatronics. That led to the creation of Shadow Bonnie. First of all, look at the timeline of each of them specifically. Both appear in FNAF 2, Shadow Bonnie looking more like the toy animatronic Toy Bonnie, while Shadow Freddy looks more like the original, aka the withered Golden Freddy. Not only do their looks hint at this difference, but the fact that Shadow Freddy only appears in parts and service, where the withered / originals resides, could further imply this difference. After FNAF 2 happens and the toys possessed by the second incident are eventually scrapped and turned to junk, we never see Shadow Bonnie canonically again after this point in the timeline, which would make sense if the second incident children are now finished with and freed. However, we canonically still see Shadow Freddy after they're scrapped, until the original suits possessed by the first incident are destroyed as well, which leads to us never seeing Shadow Freddy again after this point in the timeline, which seems to subtly imply that Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie are the manifestations of both separate incidents. Nightmare aka Shadow Freddy also only appears in FNAF 4 after we see the Nightmare versions of all the original 5 animatronics, which we're now theorizing led to Shadow Freddy, and in Ultimate Custom Night says, "I am your wickedness, made of flesh." Wickedness being defined as the quality of being evil or morally wrong, Shadow Freddy being William's evil, aka remnant from his killings. Finally, I want to mention Midnight Motorist and how some people believe the footprints to be the Shadow animatronics. If you believe this theory, then that doesn't work though. If the crying child is the one heading to that place again, then that automatically puts this minigame in the pre-1983 years before he dies, which means the Shadow animatronics could not be the missing children, unless we want to say that the missing children's incident happens in 1983 before he dies and not 1985, even though every single interpretation so far of said event has always set the date to 1985. So unless for some reason the incident takes place in 1983, unlike what recent sources are telling us, then the footprints cannot be from the Shadow animatronics, like some people believe. More on Midnight Motorist in this video. So, what do you think? Shadow Freddy aka Nightmare being the remnant of the original missing children's incident, while Shadow Bonnie is the remnant of the second missing children's incident. I would now consider the unsolved mystery of Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie, the Shadow animatronics, solved.